it's interesting and explain how it's interesting. And then we talk about the technology's concept that the paper's contribution are built upon. And also the benchmark or baseline. So you say, what is the baseline for this area? How am I comparing the two? It's about evaluation, performance, so what is the baseline? What are people using? And how am I comparing my work to theirs? So again, this is part of the evidence, right? That actually, if you say mine is the best, what is your evidence? What is your evidence? And you say, oh, here's the baseline that I'm comparing it to. And mine performs better, depending on the area, of course. My performs better, or provides more accuracy, whatever, right? And you have to compare it to other methods, and you say, so it performs much better than others. And then, so we went from so we had the title, abstract, introduction, background, and now we go to the main body of the paper. So this is where most of the new material will be. Okay. Most of the new material that you have, because the background you could use actually for multiple papers, but different directions, that's all, right? So it really consists of the solution, development, results, and discussion. And it should include usually definitions of concepts, algorithms, description. Remember, this talk is mostly computer science, technical, so it's not really more the social sciences for some of you actually who are doing research in this area. Algorithms, description of test data, experimental method, summaries of computed or experimental results, theorems, proofs, and critical analysis of results. By the way, what is the difference between criticize and critique? Can somebody tell me what the difference is? If I say I critique and I criticize, what is the difference between the two? Is there a difference? Are they the same? Yes?
Maybe it's criticize and critique is maybe the way you're criticizing something. I mean, a good way and a bad way. So criticize and make defense about it.
What is criticize?
And critique is saying the negative things, but in a good way. So I don't really. My critique.
Negative way of
I think that's the main.
No, I think I get your point. I think you're right. Actually, you're right. So critique is actually positive and negative. So when I say I critique a piece of work, that means I highlight the positive and the negative. Puisque comme en français, si en français on dit en critique, c'est négatif. But in English, it's actually positive and negative. So when I say critique, it means it's positive and negative. When I criticize, c'est l'équivalent à critique en français. Criticize means it's only negative, right? So we usually don't criticize, we critique. In scientific terms, we never criticize, we critique. We have to be very careful. Whenever you do work, you critique work, you do not criticize. Right? You always talk about what is the positive, what is the negative. And then we talk about the implication of result in the light of previous work. Let me give you an example here before we move on. So a long time ago, I actually started this work when I was in I did a master's thesis when I was at the University of Colorado on data clustering. How many of you know about data clustering? Data clustering, unsupervised learning, supervised learning. Oh, I'm surprised actually that you know. Supervised learning, unsupervised learning. Okay, anyway, so data clustering is unsupervised learning. Okay, it's unsupervised learning. I've done actually work about unsupervised learning a long time ago. And this is to highlight the implications here. So what was the purpose of this work? It was really about demonstrating that objects naturally cluster, right? Any object. Let me give an example. You go to a conference. What do you look for? So you are at the reception. You usually try to hear somebody, العالمية, and you go next. So you naturally are attracted to people like you. لكنه عربي لكنه مسلم لكنه واحد من بلادك, depending where you are. لكنك في الجزائر واحد من الشاوية الآخر من عرب. So it depends, right? So you have a natural way of clustering, right? Depending, so we want to prove that it doesn't matter what clustering methods we use because things cluster naturally. Okay? That's the problem. Then we said, okay, how do we go about doing this? All right, we said, we're going to use synthetic data to actually look at, we have many methods, okay, for clustering, hierarchical, agglomerative data clustering methods, and we used them on synthetic data that created, that we randomly selected different distribution. I don't want to give a lot of details. And then we did actually real data, and usually it was about movie preferences and everything. And then we found actually that indeed, doesn't matter what the method is, we had basically similar clusters. So if we use method X and the same data, we would have clusters, and then method Y, we actually have almost the same methods. And then Z, the same thing. And we had many actually. And we also had different distributions and everything. It was a very extensive piece of work. Then we say, okay, this is the new knowledge. Now I have proven to you the non-new knowledge is that it doesn't matter what methods we're using to cluster data, because all of them will cluster naturally. This is the much I create, but nobody knew that. Now people know that, because I proved it. But then you say, what are the implications of that? What does that mean? What is the practical implications of that? Well, there's actually a very important practical implication, and that is that if you are to cluster data, why do you cluster it with the method that is the most expensive? Use one that is the least expensive, because it can produce the same result. So that's the practical implication. Right? So this is a new knowledge, but also is an implication of it. And the implication is now you can cluster data with the cheapest one. Right? So it doesn't take a long time to do it. Do it with that, because you're almost guaranteed that you're going to have the same cluster. So that's why you need to know actually what is the implications of your work. So you created a knowledge, what are the implications? Okay? And then the conclusion. So we talked about now the main body and the conclusion. The conclusion is a summary, unlike the abstract. Okay? So it's not the same as the abstract, as I said, but it can contain elements of the abstract, and it reiterates basically this is your novel features in concluding remarks. And not only that, this is your last chance this is the last chance to convince the reader that should accept the paper. Please accept the paper. That's the last chance. So you need to articulate it in such a way that makes it very easy. Oh, I misread. Oh, let me go back and read the paper. Because, now I understand. So this is your last chance to convince the reader that actually the paper is worth publishing. Okay? Spend some time doing that. So usually the outline is the main results, limitations of those results. You have to say, okay, here's what I've done, but there's some limitation. So this is for further work, right? For people who actually say, I would like to extend that, because it doesn't apply to everything. We only made some assumptions, right? So the limitation and the implication that we talked about of the results. So the case here is that it doesn't matter which clustering method you use, just any one of them. Actually, the cheapest one. The implication, and also the avenue for everything, what we're trying to do in the future, right? So we'd like to extend. So here's what we've done, but there's still much work to be done. And for people who want to do further research in this area. Now, either we stop here, or we continue, because this is the part before I have the... So are you still pumped up or tired? Are you tired? No? Are you sure? Absolutely sure? لا نعمل شو فيها نعمل ديمقراطية. Okay? Okay, for those of you who are in favor of taking a break, raise your hand. In favor, taking a break. Okay? Right? Right? Those those that actually want to continue, raise your hand. أعطوني مشكلة. half. خلي الدكتور بيصير الدكتور هو اللي بيصير.
بوست تعديني لي تبارك